because I think he made it abundantly clear last year that they were not trading Myles Garrett. And if they weren't going to do it last year, why would they do it this year?
I understand all the questions. I'll be honest, I don't really want to waste a ton more breath on the topic.
Sure. As of now, Andrew Berry's still pretty clear that the Browns aren't going to trade Myles Garrett, but I suppose anything could change.
The tension around Myles Garrett right now feels different, and not in a casual, off-season rumor kind of way. This is the kind of situation where fans start reading between the lines, insiders start connecting dots, and suddenly a simple contract adjustment turns into a full-blown trade narrative. And just when things started heating up, Andrew Berry stepped in and shut everything down. But here's the thing. When a GM has to shut something down this firmly, it usually means the noise got loud for a reason. So let's set the scene. During the annual league meeting in Phoenix, Berry addressed the speculation head-on. No dodging, no vague answers, just a direct statement. If the Cleveland Browns wanted to trade Garrett, they wouldn't have needed to adjust his contract. That's not just a denial, that's a strategic message. It's Berry trying to put a lid on a story that was starting to spiral into something bigger than the team wanted.
If you got to get rid of him, if he's forcing him away, I don't want A.J. Brown to leave. But if he's forcing his way out of the building, if he's forcing his way out of a team that's took you to 2 Super Bowls in the last 3 years, then absolutely. I guess you got to do what you got to do, and I'd send him to the Browns.
Here's the part nobody's talking about, the timing of that contract adjustment. Garrett signed a massive 4-year, $160 million deal in March 2025, making him one of the highest-paid defensive players in the league. Now, when a team revisits a contract quickly, it raises eyebrows. Around the NFL, contract tweaks often signal flexibility, cap management, restructuring, or even laying groundwork for a future move. So naturally, people started connecting dots. And it didn't help that Garrett already had a history of being vocal about his ambitions. Earlier in 2025, he made it clear he wanted to compete for Super Bowls. That wasn't just a casual statement, it was a signal that he's thinking about winning, legacy, and making the most of his prime years. So when you combine that mindset with a contract adjustment, it's easy to see why rumors picked up speed again. This is where it gets dangerous, because now the Browns are dealing with perception versus reality. Internally, they might be fully committed to Garrett as a franchise cornerstone, but externally, people are questioning whether that commitment is as solid as they claim. And in today's sports world, perception spreads faster than facts. Let's break down Berry's tone, because it matters more than people think. When he said Garrett is a career Brown and one of the faces of the organization, that's a strong endorsement. But when he followed it up with, "I don't really want to waste a ton more breath on the topic," that's where the emotion slips in. That's frustrating. That's a front office tired of answering the same question over and over again. But here's the reality. Those questions don't just disappear because you're tired of answering them. They stick around until the team's performance gives people a reason to stop asking.
And if I'm Myles Garrett, I'm feeling the same way.
I wonder if they play this, to Marcus's point there on the phones, where they try to win early, and if it doesn't happen, the other big piece of this entire Myles contract conversation is the fact that he has a no-trade clause. But if you start
which doesn't matter, because all that does is it gives him the power to steer where he goes.
Right.
Now, let's zoom out, because this isn't just about one player or one team. This is about how elite athletes think across all sports. Look at what's happening in the NBA right now. Players are more aware than ever of their career windows. Stars like Kevin Durant and Giannis Antetokounmpo constantly evaluate whether their teams are in a position to win, not just compete. And that mindset? It's creeping into the NFL. This is where young players usually make mistakes. They assume loyalty alone will lead to success. But in reality, success requires alignment: front office, coaching, roster, and timing. If one piece is off, everything feels unstable. For Garrett, the situation is uniquely complex. He's already secured the financial side. That $160 million deal means he doesn't have to worry about getting paid again. So now the focus naturally shifts to winning. And when winning becomes the priority, every decision the team makes gets scrutinized more closely. This is where it gets dangerous for Cleveland, because they're not just managing a player, they're managing expectations. Garrett isn't just any star, he's the identity of the franchise. He's the player other teams game plan around. He's the reason the defense has credibility. If he stays and the team succeeds, everything looks perfect. Barry's stance gets validated, the contract looks justified, and the narrative flips completely. But if the team struggles, that's when things get complicated, because then the conversation shifts from why wouldn't they trade him to why didn't they? And that's the pressure the Browns are quietly carrying right now.
It's not that Myles does not love Cleveland. It's not that Myles doesn't love the Browns. There's just only so much a guy can take.
He doesn't, you know what he doesn't love?
Here's the part nobody's talking about. The Browns might actually have more at stake in this situation than Garrett does. For Garrett, his legacy will be defined by his performance and eventually whether he wins. For the Browns, their credibility as a franchise is tied directly to how they handle a player like him. Because when you call someone a career Brown, you're making a promise, not just to the player, but to the fans. And promises in sports, they get tested quickly. Now let's bring in another angle to keep this real. Look at how NBA teams are handling their stars. The Milwaukee Bucks built around Giannis and delivered a championship. The Denver Nuggets did the same with Nikola Jokic. Those are examples of organizations aligning everything around their superstar, and it's working. Compare that to teams that hesitate, miscalculate, or fail to build properly, and suddenly you're dealing with constant rumors, uncertainty, and pressure. That's the line Cleveland is walking. This is where young players usually make a mistake by thinking stability means staying in one place no matter what. But stability in sports actually comes from winning environments, not just long-term contracts. And Garrett is at the stage of his career where that distinction matters more than ever. Let's also talk about the locker room dynamic, because it's a subtle but important piece. When a team publicly shuts down trade rumors about its biggest star, it sends a message internally. It says, "This is our guy. We're not moving him." That can be stabilizing, but it can also create added pressure on everyone else to perform at a higher level.
The initial is, as a GM, probably like, well, go. You know, that ego thing, screw it then, go. Yeah. And then it's like, no, I'm not saying that. How do we get him to stay? How do we fix this?
Because now the expectation is clear. You're building around this player, so you better deliver. And if you don't, the questions come back even louder. This is where it gets dangerous for the long-term narrative, because the NFL doesn't wait. Windows close fast, careers change quickly, and what looks stable one season can feel uncertain the next. Garrett hasn't gone public with any new trade demands this time around, and that's important. It shows a level of professionalism and patience. But silence doesn't always mean satisfaction. It just means the situation hasn't reached a breaking point yet. And that's why Barry's statement, while strong, doesn't completely end the conversation. It pauses it. Because ultimately, the only thing that truly ends speculation is success, winning seasons, playoff runs, legitimate Super Bowl contention. Without those, the narrative always finds its way back. Here's the part nobody is talking about. Fans are smarter than ever. They understand contracts, cap space, and team building strategies. So when they see a contract adjustment, they don't just take it at face value. They analyze it, they question it, they connect it to bigger possibilities. And that's exactly what happened here.
I don't know. I don't have the answer to it, but everybody assumes by moving this money around with Myles Garrett's contract that they're sellers. And I would look at it the opposite way and think of the Cleveland Browns as buyers.
So even though Barry shut down the rumors, the curiosity doesn't disappear overnight. It lingers. And that brings us to the bigger picture, the legacy conversation. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about whether Garrett gets traded. It's about what his career represents. Is he the player who stays loyal and tries to build something long-term with one franchise, or is he the player who eventually decides that chasing championships requires a different path? And for the Browns, the question is just as important. Can they actually build a team that matches Garrett's ambitions, or are they asking him to believe in a vision that hasn't fully materialized yet? Because here's the truth.
Barry can shut down rumors in April, but if the Browns don't deliver in the season that follows, those same rumors will come back stronger, louder, and harder to control. So now the pressure shifts from the press conference to the field, and that's where everything will be decided. So let me leave you with this. If you're Myles Garrett, do you trust the Browns' vision enough to stay patient, or do you start thinking about what your career could look like somewhere else? Because one thing is clear, this situation isn't as settled as it sounds.